William James Gaither, stage name Bill Gaither, is an American Southern gospel and contemporary Christian music artist, being the lead in two successful groups, the Bill Gaither Trio and the Gaither Vocal Band. Debuting in the 50s and still active today, he is also a record businessman, managing both Gaither's Studios, a recording studio, and the Gaither Music Group record label, both located in his hometown of Alexandria, Indiana. The Gaither Music Group being possibly the largest independent religious record label. But when you climb so high, at what point is it really independent? But one of the gospel singer's business motives was to make cartoons. And why? Well, let's just get the obvious out of the way, the success of VeggieTales.
If you like to talk to tomatoes.
Being a CG animated series with themes and stories in relation to Christianity. It was exceptionally successful for both direct-to-video animation and religious programming, due to being well made enough to be successful beyond its target demographic of children in religious households. It was a creative miracle that somehow managed to collectively please everybody regardless of age or religious identity.
It's forcing you the message without any compassion or mercy, resulting the film to be ridiculously preachy.
That's the point, you f***ing drill bit. I saw very little of it growing up, but I did like what I saw then. I can recall segments being aired on the TV screens at Chuck E. Cheese. And by the way, the master copies of the Charles Entertainment Cheese show tapes have since leaked to the public. You can binge all the lore at home, at least from 88 to 2014.
And I was like, baby, 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 oh, baby, 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 no.
Which includes VeggieTales songs. I think I also saw, like, part of the Pirates Who Don't Do Anything movie at a friend's house at once or something. And of course, the success expanded its relevant market. And with the help of Benji Gaither, one of Bill's sons, Live Bait Productions, an animation studio, was founded in 1997, utilizing the family label-owned music of the Gaithers and the library of their record label. So what happens when a gospel singer tries to make cartoons, seemingly only for cash and not 3/4 for the Lord? Well, let me tell you, it's a disaster.
Say, look at this. I've been cleaning out my nest, and I found an old book of my poetry.
He said that he had seen God, and God told him to raise $8 million. God was broke.
Visit us at www.livebaitproductions.com for information on this upcoming release. The Legend at Gaither's Pond is the fourth story in a lively animated Gaither's Pond video series.
The debut of Live Bait Productions was Gaither's Pond, created by Benji with other relative Amy Michelle Gaither, starring Gaither Vocal Band vocalist Mark Lowry, in addition to co-starring Bill and his wife and prominent bandmate Gloria Gaither. Gaither's Pond would release 4 episodes, specials, whatever you want to call them, between 1997 and 2004. First on home media, and would also be syndicated on Smile of a Child
Television Network.
a name that lives in infamy for kids forced to watch religious shows. I didn't have to personally, thanks Redditor parents, but this network is just an uncanny rabbit hole in of itself. It is also a subsidiary of the Trinity Broadcasting Network, this being the 24-hour children's alternative. If you were a toddler in the 2000s, especially if raised in a religious household, and there's like a weird piece of media that confused or scared you that you can barely remember since you were either like so young that you repressed the trauma, it was probably a show running on Smile of a Child, because this was basically religious PBS. It was free and had faith and also the recession, so it was free, running such classics as Otto Be Good, Get Up, which came out a year before Pixar's Cars, Hermie and Friends, the notorious JJ the Jet Plane, Charlie the Church Mouse, which, by the way, is educational, Bible stories, PC game, and software, and My Bed Bugs for some reason, which wasn't even a religious show, but I guess was cheap to syndicate, and how could we possibly forget Joy Junction?
And do you know what it was? What was it, Marty? Well, it was in Arizona, I'll tell you that right now. Ron, they were looking at some dirty pictures and they wanted me to look too.
It was also the primary way to watch the original VeggieTales videos on television. So in the 2000s, if you didn't own the original videos, but you saw them, you probably saw them here. As I've described before, most religious programming does not receive mainstream releases due to the biases not allowing a general audience of consumers, so it doesn't have a huge production budget or distribution budget, etc. And also, again, it was made primarily by a record company and a Nepo Babies animation studio. Gaither's Pond, distribution-wise, is similar to the original VeggieTales videos or Peanuts TV specials, where it's basically an episode of a show per special, but it doesn't qualify as one due to the results of not being TV episodes in a season, regardless of the similar runtime. Gaither's Pond, distribution-wise, does not have a season. The 4 specials being The Lore Depths, Fish Tales, The Great Divide, and The Legend of. And if you can't tell by the covers, they use CGI. So a first-time independent project with no budget utilizing technology in its infancy? What would that look like?
Vision, blurring, body expanding.
What can we do? Big Bass Bill says everyone's welcome here at Gaither's Pond.
What the hell? Oh my God, no way.
Or no, wait, what am I talking about, infancy? This was 1999. CG standards were much higher, and Bill Gaither is apparently worth $8 million. I don't know about 99, but regardless, he was an industry professional since the 1950s. Like, he clearly had way more money for this Ponzi scheme. This was cheaping out. I mean, like, it's set in a swamp, so puke green everything galore. Now, the elephant in the room is the character designs. They have oddly complex facial features which are fairly repulsive. No, extremely repulsive when they move.
Look at Barbie. What a scary bitch.
He's like a fish. Why does he look like Shaq? There's no stylization in making anthropomorphic animals. The facial hair being the most distracting. Like, why do they have beards? The actual animals don't. A big part of the show was its all-star lineup of musicians affiliated with Bill Gaither, to the point where it shows the voice actors in the intro, which I guess is supposed to be a selling point for the adult fans of the Gaither's label and genre who bought this for their kids. But what kid is gonna be like, oh shit, Fistel Goodman is in this show? It feels desperate to exploit iconography that it doesn't have. Like, do most kids at the time even know who these people are or their music? You know, enough to want to watch a show with them in it? If you want to count it as celebrity endorsement media, it completely fails at basic celebrity exploitation. But this also brings up the question, are these people even celebrities? It's like if I made like a Carrie Cleveland show. Like, yeah, she's on Google, but no stupid child is gonna get hyped over that. Because although by definition professional gospel musicians, they're not f***ing Aretha Franklin, the Gaither's vocal band music is utilized throughout, as well as other musicians including Mark Lowry's solo work, Craig Duncan, the Happy Goodmans, and other obscure gospel names. So I guess to make the characters more recognizable, there's supposed to be like animal caricatures of the voice actors, but you know, they're humans. They just inserted human facial attributes that would probably take away more work that they didn't need to do.
President Vestal Gooseman. That has a nice sound to it.
Hail to the goose, Vestal Gooseman is our leader.
It's just going all over the place. It's commendable that there's energy visible, but it's just incomprehensible on top of the repulsive character anatomy. It's like Annoying Orange, but CG with its emphasis on realism. Oh no, wait, it's like Shark Tale, but even worse. The animals don't move like their actual counterparts. I think it takes influence from like Looney Tunes or just anything from like the 30s or 40s, you know, when Bill Gaither himself was a kid, with its bizarre expressions. But every face is like a Looney Tunes reaction face, which of course looks like shit because it's 3D, and nobody's getting whacked in the face with a big ass mallet. why are they loony? Did they show up to communion right after a Coke binge? It's not really a joke if there's no breaks in the loony bin expressions. Ren and Stimpy did this exact thing of constant absurd expressions for shock value, but here it's a clear intentional attempt at fluidity, failing to realize the actual expressions are poor and things need to be on screen long enough so the viewers can absorb it. The framing is also ridiculous. It's always cutting to like some other thing which is also moving. There's no moderation to make things visible. Like these fish can't stay still for 10 f***ing seconds. Style is style, and it's a shit style, much like this channel. And sometimes it'll be framed in a way where something is blocking what we're supposed to see. Like, is this f***ing goose vagina POV shot necessary? Did they just make up the shots as they went along? Was this even storyboarded? It's super precise with its unneeded absurdism. Like, there's always got to be some kooky expression in every frame, and it's horrific. Oh yeah, the actual show is about a carp named Carl who looks more like a shark because these characters and animal proportions make zero sense. And he's getting in predicaments and learning a lesson along the way. The voice of reason being Buddy Greenfly. Being created by and starring musicians, it's also a musical show. The musical numbers featuring all the same problems of just being way too energetic and unintentionally disturbing. The songs themselves are just way too long for half-hour episodes. There's like 4-ish 3-minute songs per 20-ish minute episode. The general lack of storytelling is clearly just done out of a laziness. It's like they had to build a plot around a pre-existing songs they didn't even bother re-recording for context. Or let's just make animated music videos with a plot. It's an incredibly unsparing repurpose. They just cross-dissolve in and out, irrelevantly translating sequences like Grandma got run over by a reindeer.
So I gave my sermon an urban kick. My rhymes are fly, my beats are sick. My crew is big and it keeps getting bigger. That's 'cause Jesus Christ is my...
Now, the songs themselves aren't actually that bad, and that's exactly the problem with the show. They're out of place. And it's extra nightmare fuel given the amount of awful fish characters harmonizing together. It's like a POV of being a ritual victim. But believe it or not, what I just showed you is the second iteration of the art style. From episodes/specials, whatever, 2 and 3. This is what episode 1 looks like.
I thought I told you to stay with me.
I was just having a look at this here shiny thing.
No, Guppy. You don't want to do that.
Episode 1 looks like Roblox. And this is before all the questionable musician character designs and Looney Tunes faces.
I mean, breaking our laws and things. You have responsibility. Act like a responsible guppy. Okay? I don't know what this world's coming to.
But without all the unintentionally disturbing pizzazz it would develop, it's just awkward dragging. Reminds me of Angela Anaconda's TV series being the second iteration somehow. It's shocking to discover it gets worse. But on the contrary, the 4th and final episode is actually an improvement animation-wise. The textures are more detailed and less repulsive, and the Looney Tunes is cranked down for the better. And hopefully that saved time in the animation department, because work smarter, not harder, you know? But the character designs are mostly the same and still inexcusably grotesque. But there is one lizard character that actually looks like a lizard, not modeled after some random Christian musician. The finale, The Legend of Gaither's Pond, is also hyped up as some big special episode. I'm not sure if it was supposed to be a finale with a bang, but good timing, I guess. In between musical numbers, it has ridiculously hard to follow conversations, both through dialogue and visuals. There's not really any, like, experiences in the conflicts, it's just talking. Like, hey, weird fish, don't do that. Okay, I won't do that. Thanks, fellow hellspawn neighbor. Rinse and repeat, rinse and repeat. Like, I get trying to keep it simple to make room for the tunes, but, like, plots still need to happen. The only thing they had a vision for was the music, except the music was just repurposing. So they had one idea, and even that was lazy. Nobody of the right hustle of creativity was brought in. They didn't know how to develop a show, but they did it anyway, and that's not a good thing. They didn't fight the limitations, they fucked it up completely. Like, there's so many different ways you can be creative, but one team, one person cannot do everything, but they said to hell with that basic practice standard. The only visible effort is the absurdist ordinary expressions. Like, I doubt they hired, like, actual cartoonists and television producers, seemingly out of laziness or arrogance. Yeah, we can do everything. My dad's rich. We're not even gonna get this entire large ensemble of gospel musicians to do their job and sing because they've already sung before. Why be creative when you could just pay a licensing fee? Oh wait, we own this music, we don't need to. Let's just abuse it. It's like it off the cuff, the animated show, you know, animation, the very easy and uncomplicated medium. It just tried to scoop up some of VeggieTales' market popularity with a bunch of incomprehensible slop made by a nepo baby that didn't earn a budget. Here, son, go make daddy a show so we can have even more money. Who cares if 1 Timothy 6:10 says that for the love of money is the root of all kinds of evils. And we have a multi-million-dollar music family already. We need more money. Disregard Exodus 20:15. We gotta steal from VeggieTales. I saw the light and the Lord told me to get $8 million more, Benji. More like, Gaither's Pond. It's not some flawed show made by a small team of people that truly cared about what they were doing. They just wanted to make off VeggieTales. It's like Peppermint Park, actually. You want to give it the benefit of the doubt, but then you sit down and watch the damn thing, and you're like, oh my god, it's actually ripping off the thing. It's not just similar. This is very evident by the next live bait/Gaither production, which was co-created by Benji Gaither. Dorby's Making Decisions, which is both artistically and fiscally just a flat-out VeggieTales ripoff. The Gaithers' attempt at stealing VeggieTales' market share with their own thing didn't work in the end, so they just threw "Thou shall not steal" out the goddamn window and fully plagiarized without a doubt. Dorby's Making Decisions was presumably a failed pilot for another Gaithers animated series. I guess Gaither's Pond performed better on the home video market due to the fact that it was a masterclass in failing the celebrity exploit. But the DVD cover is also mostly just purple. Like, it's not gonna get somebody's mom's attention in the $5 movie section. Yeah, remember those? It also had a VHS release, but those are seemingly way more rare. The main slogan of the series is, "Why don't they go away?" Except that's not like a thing people say. Is it like a joke or a rhetorical question about the concept? I don't get it. The Dorbys themselves are a species of human and spherical creatures. They're not orbs, they're Dorbs.
I got this free. Man. You know what? I'd love to join your band. Can I join your band? You know what? I just cannot.
Christmas. Boomhauer, I didn't understand a word you just said.
Yeah, that is this whole special. So a more accurate slogan would be, "Why don't they shut the f*** up?" I first came across this thing maybe like 10 years ago. It's kind of infamous online, and I assumed it was like some forgotten toy advertisement tie-in for a 2000s collectible, like Mighty Beans or a childhood favorite of mine, Go-Go's Crazy Bones.
I'm so happy I need to smoke a cigarette. I haven't had one in 17 years.
It reminds me of the Weebles specials, The Quest for the Golden Flicker, An Infamous Piece of Lost Media, and Higglytown Heroes. Whatever this subgenre of like 2000s bad CG specifically shaped people media is. It's like one of those plus VeggieTales ripoff, not helped by the fact that VeggieTales character designs retain very simple geometry. Given the entire cast being a variant of a single thing, spherical people probably would have provided another business opportunity for collectibles. But making everybody a spear with arms and legs was a terrible decision because spears roll. Like, they're not supposed to do that. They're like moonwalking because they're too short to bend their knees. Like, imagine if Bob the Tomato had arms and legs and that was every character design. Where are their f***ing kneecaps? You know, the things your legs have? At least the characters in like The Pack is Back had like long legs to move coherently. And why? Because Pack's a hero. Pack just can't be beat. Yeah! If Mr. Potato Head woke up from a post-communion coke binge, he'd move like this. The actual Dorbies themselves consist of multiple ensembles for some reason. It's like a variety show or an anthology, but not really. It's just multiple unrelated plots within the world of Dorbies. Maybe it's supposed to be like a show within a show because there's occasional, like, cutaways of, like, some redneck stepdad falling asleep to it. So I guess by this logic, Dorbies is a fake television cable package, and we watch various fake shows. I guess I'll go over each plot/show whatever individually. And by the way, this is only 34 minutes long with credits, so nothing much happens in the unnecessary large quantity of plots that it takes time away from all of the stories. But first, the theme song. It asks the question, why don't they go away? Which, if we were to interpret too literally and actually answer, it's because Dorbies live here, it's their world. The opening introductory narration literally confirms this.
Live the Dorbies.
They don't go away because they live here. It's such a stupid rhetorical question that's also a slogan. And what do you know, not much of an upgrade from Gaither's Pond. The backgrounds aren't even completely filled. You can see like the cutoffs and the textures and stuff. The framing is even more illogical and disgusting. The narrator in the sequences is looking down and not at the audience, and he's right in front of the camera. The main plot, I think, is about two students, Jack and Mary Jane, ditching school. And there's a lot of parody humor similar to VeggieTales' use of pop culture to draw parallels to biblical rhetoric often found in the source material. Here, when they try to leave school, it's like Indiana Jones and Mission Impossible for some reason, which doesn't help the case that they shouldn't ditch class. Like, if there was a f***ing boulder in the school, I'd want to get out of here. I ain't getting crushed to death in third period. Like, what is this, the School of Death? But to give the special credit, there is one decent song.
Walking down the aisle, tripped over Uncle Howard's boot. And then my dress went woo! And everybody laughed and said, oh, how cute! Remember, yes, ma'am, and thank you, please, and curtsy on your way out.
The flow isn't the best, but it's actually pretty catchy. On the subject of sound design, the voice acting isn't horrible either. The actual dialogue is what really gets it into Dorbies, why don't they shut the f*** up territory. But they leave school and boo, haunted house. But the house isn't haunted. Jimmy Hoffa and Elvis live there. Jimmy Hoffa was a renowned American labor union leader who disappeared in 1975, presumably due to connections with organized crime.
The American people would have fact that this is a strike-breaking, union-busting bill, in my opinion.
I guess the Jimmy Hoffa references are for the adults. Like, you'd have to be, like, Italian or something to get that joke on. Not that I'm one of those creepy Italians who think they're smooth. Like, I get an Elvis parody. I think most people my age were probably introduced to Elvis through parody humor in media.
Oh, yeah. Steamed vegetables. What'd Mama make for you? 9 fried peanut butter banana sandwiches and a thermos full of tranquilizers. Thank you very much. Yep. I have left the building.
You know, because he himself was a character.
Lord have mercy.
But f***ing Jimmy Hoffa?
Hey, yo, the pizza here.
Oh yeah, and then the duo learns that they shouldn't ditch school and go to a haunted house or bad things will happen to them because Jack gets stuck in the bottom of the basement like baby Jessica. Get it? Because random history reference.
Are you okay, son? We were worried sick about you.
I'm sorry, Dad. I guess I really made a bad decision today.
Son, there's gonna be plenty of time for you to grow up. And you know what?
What?
Tomorrow's a brand new day.
And do they get punished at the end? Nope. Next is about Otto, who is just an Arnold Schwarzenegger parody because pop culture reference that isn't clever.
Thank you. I am Otto. I am looking for some clothes that will make me more discreet, and then I can fit in better with the common folk.
And he wants clothes, so he goes to this guy who looks like he's afraid of bitches with penises, and the whole plot is just a series of shopping montages because looking good and feeling fine.
Got a penis. Got a penis.
And then DJ's like, you should go to a different store because those clothes would suit you better and I don't want to manipulate you into giving my business money. And by the way,
Want to smack your grandma on
Wrinkly ass. Wrinkly ass.
I guess it's about honesty, only in like the last 2 minutes, and a shopping montage subplot is pretty f***ing fruity for Christian show standards. There's also Mr. Poe and Yogel, a superhero parody segment.
Oh, star, strongest army in the world, who's loved by every boy und girl und yak. It's Mr. Poe. Und Jogel.
Definitely not inspired by Larry Boy. And again, I didn't grow up with VeggieTales, I'm no expert, so I wouldn't be surprised if there were other plagiarisms I didn't notice.
Who makes his living fighting crime?
Like, look at this shit. I just got some, like, stock models off of Napster.com and didn't even repose them. Oh no, Yogel gets captured by the Chick-fil-A cow. Mr. Poe saves him the end.
Live on News 9, your dumbass just sold a 16-year-old girl a pack of cigarettes.
More like Dorby's nuts in your f***ing mouth. If you want to count it as a failed pilot, it's easily the worst one I've ever seen.
Bah humbug, you stupid bitch.
Damn it.
But before the end of the show, there are also a handful of other Gaither live bait productions I was not able to get my hands on. Like, you'd have to own a DVD, which are rare due to minimum manufacturing, which I guess makes them lost media due to inaccessibility.
If you like this video, then take a look at this trailer of our new animated pilot we've created. Introducing Wobots.
But jump into the mid-2000s, the newest available one is a Wobots Christmas, which is surprisingly an actually pretty decent little generic holiday special. Wobots referencing the protagonist Zach's speech impediment.
A wobot.
No, a robot.
In a dark, far future of late-stage capitalism where orphans are enslaved for labor, Zach becomes distasteful over Christmas as it's just more work on his unfortunate part. But after befriending robots intended to be scrapped, which he saves, he learns to appreciate the actual meaning of Christmas, which he completely misunderstood to begin with, given the situation he was born and forced into. It's actually shocking how Christ is sparingly used in a way that isn't tacky or lazy. It's kind of like a Charlie Brown Christmas and Rudolph combined, at least morally. The music, once again, not horrendous. The opening number, Over Time, which I can't play for copyright, is actually really catchy and does a good job of displaying character motivations. Some of the dialogue is genuinely funny, too.
Fantastic. PD3 personal assistant. Reason for return?
What?
What's wrong with it?
He's broken, I guess.
Wobot is broken. What else are you doing today, kid? Hunting for wabbits?
The concept is so surprisingly dark that it uses it to its advantage for comedy.
Don't sass me, boy. It's because you're always crying about something. Give us pillows for the beds. Feed us 3 times a day. Give us shoes. Give me.
And yeah, the animation is amazing, but it's not bowling alley slop. If you like weird 2000s shit along the lines of like Scary Godmother, then I actually recommend it. That's not anything amazing, but it looks like if it's your thing for nostalgia value, then you'll probably have a fun time. Not much to say, and also not much to get mad over. And you know why? Because Benji Gaither was only credited as a voice actor, and the special was recorded at Gaither Studios. So it actually succeeds because it's the least actual Gaither. There was an actual idea here, and I can't call it a VeggieTales ripoff, which is not the case at all for Gaither's Pond and Dorby's.
Hi guys, I'm Chris the Cucumber, and I brought facts today. Did you know Hawaii is a planet?
Dumb, you dumb. Go sit down.
Alright, blah blah blah, VeggieTales is the most successful piece of Christian animation and created an entire market because basic economics. Now, I've already talked about the most notorious products of this capitalism phenomenon, the cartoons with the Bill Gaither family and friends' names attached to them.
But no, I gotta run a retraction. I've gotta stick with the facts. I've gotta only tell the real story. I've gotta think
before I write.
Well, besides Hoodwinked, which really isn't a VeggieTales ripoff, but Benji Gaither did voice act and perform the original song Be Prepared. Hell, a Wobots Christmas was included as an extra on Hoodwinked DVDs. So if you like Hoodwinked, then I think Gaither's peak, baby! But thanks to viewers like you, I have since been informed that there are more products of this genre, not the fault of the Bill Gaither cinematic universe.
Say, look at this. I've been cleaning out my nest, and I found an old book of my poetry.
Vegetables! My arch nemesis! The government and my mom!
10 Rockin' Rules. Join kids of all ages who are laughing and learning with the new animated series that's a hit from coast to coast.
I'm glad God gave us his 10 rules.
Rock on, Chip! God Rocks, in stores now.
God Rocks is not just a VeggieTales ripoff show, it's a VeggieTales ripoff franchise of all things. Now, in all my years of trying to find, like, bad forgotten shows and piecing together whatever the hell Smile of a Child was.
Well, it was in Arizona, I'll tell you that right now.
I'd come across the show prior, and when I was informed that it was a VeggieTales ripoff, well, I was shocked. I thought this was a Wiggles ripoff, then it dawned on me. It's both, you f***ing idiot. Now, I didn't grow up on either, so the signs weren't obvious. Oh yeah, the Wiggles are a renowned early childhood educational music group. And although they debuted in 1991, it's safe to say that they absolutely hit their peak in the early 2000s. Meaning that their market also increased. So there were a ton of attempts to make the next hot preschool band. And I'm not talking preschool shows with musical numbers, that's like 90% of them ever made. I'm talking actual early childhood educational bands, which some have had TV shows, such as the Doodle Bops, the Imagination Movers, the Lori Baker Band, the Not Its. And I mean, like, I guess Yo Gabba Gabba counts since there's a ton of live stuff over the years, and Lance Rock is an actual disc jockey. I remember seeing advertisements for the Doodle Bops on, like, early 2000s Nick Jr. DVDs, might have been Lazy Town, and I'm thinking, like, holy hell, I do not want to watch that. I also remember seeing the Imagination Movers show on Disney Jr. at, like, 5 in the morning, which is an amusing enough watch until I discovered, like, King of the Hill reruns, roughly around the same time slot as Cartoon Network.
Let go my birthday!
Verses are more crap than what Bobby listens to. Now listen, to be fishes you have to think like fishes. So that means to beat you two, we have to think like fish.
And what do you know, God Rocks came in and added some Christ to the trend. And as a brief side tangent, Smile of a Child shut down this January of 2025. Not long after I last mentioned the network, which is probably for the better because this entire channel was somehow stuck in 2005 without exaggeration.
For your gift of $10 or more, Smile would like to send you the Jesus Loves Me Bunny. Snuggly, soft, and perfect for a child or grandchild, this special bunny would be a constant reminder that Jesus loves you. Push his tummy, and he sings.
Jesus loves me, this I know, for the Bible tells me so. Yes, Jesus loves me, the Bible tells me so.
Everything wrong with 2000s children's media can be seen on display with this network. It's so desperate to be cute that it rubs you pretty much the wrong way. Like this network is why analog horror became a genre. This was real, and it ended with zero fanfare. This is the final moment of broadcast.
You're on oxygen, people notice that. You feel a little bit pathetic.
If you ask me how I feel...
And I bring this up because the God Rocks franchise had some presence on Smile of a Child. Now, obviously here, the characters are sentient rocks as opposed to vegetables and fruits.
Look at Barbie!
What a scary bitch.
It stars a rock band of rocks, that refer to themselves as God Rocks instead of Christians, and they sing about how God rocks, waka waka waka, which I guess also makes this a Flintstones ripoff because there's plenty of lame rock jokes to go around.
I can rock and roll, I'm an ace at bowling. One joke and bam bam, I get the laughs rolling.
The rock band cast all have like rock sonas of their real band members. God Rocks was a band formed for the franchise. The act itself was not franchised. It is distinctively capitalizing on VeggieTales musical franchising on top of the reoccurring music in the series specials and movies. There has been plenty of original albums featuring the voice cast in character, similar to, say, Sesame Street, as well as compilation albums related to subject matter or a character from the series. And not all having something to do with Christianity, but some just having fun. As somebody who was obsessed with Pixar's Cars at a young age, the Veggies cover of Tom Cochrane's Life is a Highway from the LP Bob and Larry Go Country slaps. But because capitalism, even the typically independent religious corporations can't escape the corporate slop. Might be located in Louisiana, but not Cali, but that ain't stopping the disposable media hustle. This is evident by the franchise creator, Bruce W. Stacy, not being a band member, but did write, direct, and voice act in minor parts. So I guess the true target audience was kids that were banned from watching Your Favorite Martian because it had boobies or gorillas, since the bassist Murdoch is canonically Satanist, or Gummy Bear who shakes his giant gelatin ass on screen. It's important to note the franchise has various iterations with multiple bands under the same name. The second iteration of the band would become semi-permanent for the ensemble of sorts. This is similar to the Wiggles not having a consistent lineup over the years throughout its various forms of media, but still retaining the most integral members for as long as they can. And throughout, I will only be bringing up these semi-permanent members because if I did, I'd just be shouting names without any information given the franchise's obscurity. This is because live performances and animation were developed simultaneously with the franchising, meaning that the actual band cast in cartoon and live show differed with the exception of the lead vocalist. But eventually the live show band replaced the cartoon voice actors, completely obscuring the original lineup with the recast. The original behind-the-scenes lineup is kind of a mystery behind the names, with the exception of Cheryl Stacey Nielsen, who debuted both live and in the cartoon and is presumably related to the creator. Cheryl portrays Jem, the lead vocalist and pianist. At some point, Cheryl would marry fellow band member Todd Nielsen, who is also presumably related to the creator. Todd recasting the guitarist Chip Livingstone. J.J. Gerber would recast the bassist Splinter. Splinter was also recast by a not white guy somewhere later down the line of the later live performances.
A DEI hire.
And Darren Harris would recast the drummer Carb. Excluding this guy, this would become the semi-permanent lineup. If you are familiar with this IP, you probably recognize this lineup. Now, their self-titled TV show would release 4 episodes direct-to-video between 2002 to 4. They are not technically a part of a season, but promotional material refers to them as episodes as opposed to videos or specials. Common terminology for this type of media, just like Gaither's Peak! All the episodes also have alternative titles, like on the cover. I don't know why they did that. I guess to be quirky.
I'm not like other Christian shows. I have alternative titles.
You may expect Jem to be the main character because she's the lead vocalist, but Chip is typically the center. Chip is truly the McCartney to the Lennon, if you get what I'm saying.
Paul, I don't give a bloody damn. I'm gonna say the N-word.
No, John, that's racist. You can't say the N-word, you know.
No. Yeah, like Lennon is the lead guy in the Beatles, but Paul clearly has the guy energy. John Lennon didn't make temporary secretary, god damn it.
Yo,
I'm a fucking homosexual.
What? Now, of course, it's VeggieTales, but with rocks, so it had to be CG. The characters are rocks, but rocks aren't smooth with simple geometry. They look more like fucking turds. I'm not trying to even be funny. The texturing is atrocious. Man, it's almost like the veggies had very little texturing. One day, I ate too much Smurf cereal, and then Chip Livingstone was born. Face it, breakfast is ruined. Like, why be so realistic? It's a cartoon, except it's not even good realism because it was 2002. Carb looks like the great Mighty Pooh from Conquer. Splinter looks like he failed the scoliosis test in 6th grade. Jem looks cross-eyed, and for a rock is pretty fucking Caucasian. There's also an old lady character who is supposed to be like a cinder block, but she just has a giant hole in her chest. That's like the human equivalent of a giant skin cancer patch. She cannot be in good health. There's also a little girl side character who, I shit you not, name is Kitney Stoon.
On my little freckle nose.
That was lovely, Kitney. Let's give Miss Stoon another clap, shall we?
Yeah, that's right. They were so out of rock jokes that they resorted to naming the token redhead with pigtails after the rocks that come out of your... minerals. They were so out of ideas that they resorted to naming the token redhead with pigtails after the minerals that come out of your piss hole. That is fucking vile. You may also have noticed that the characters have like Rayman-like floating disattached arms and legs. And I guess that was kind of a good decision because the characters can play instruments still.
Oh bro, Chip Livingstone was glitching like a saucy imposter in real life.
The late Mickey Rooney also has a special guest appearance, and they just took his fucking head and made him a rock. I loved him in Breakfast with Tiffany's. Which brings up the question, why the fuck are they even rocks besides VeggieTales plagiarism? Well, Psalm 18:12 says, "The Lord is my rock, my fortress, and my deliverer, and my God is my rock, in whom I take refuge, my shield, and the horn of my salvation, in my stronghold." So, I guess they thought that pun was fucking hilarious. Again, plenty of lame rock jokes. But yet another elephant in the room is that the entire franchise is victim to generic and disposable religious music. Now, I don't know about you, but I find a lot of Christian recording artists, not recording artists who are Christian, I'm talking strictly Christian recording artists, incredibly creatively uninspired. It's just manufactured at a consensus agreement. Oh, you gave your heart to Christ? I gave my heart to Christ too. Guess I don't have to fucking try it all. You're gonna give us money because we did the same fucking thing. And it often doesn't do anything subversive with the religious source material. You know, being standard and mass is fine and all, but it's a recording. No instruments are forbidden worship. Like, be creative, but they aren't. Like the Bill Gaither cinematic universe, for example. Like, not that they can't be good, but like Gaither's Peak had some of the discography highlights, but look at the album covers. They're all practically the same and everything sounds the same.
There's lots of other characters if you don't like the Pixie Sorcerer.
No, there aren't. They're all just the same with different costumes.
Breaking character, I am a religious person, and the Christian music industry is just Disney Channel for old people. Fucking slop. You know, it's just Christian slop instead of boy band slop. It's still fucking slop. And keep in mind, Christianity is the largest religion, so multiply the sloppity slop by the largest denominational ratio. Like, okay, take the words and transform them into the song, but that takes creativity, and on most principle, it just recites or does the bare minimum. You know, Johnny Cash was historically a pretty general audience figure, and he had a ton of Christian material, but he was one of a kind. Like, if you're gonna sing the same hymn, there's already 40 other fucking versions of it. You better do it excellently. Like, upon the choice to say Nick Cave and the Bad Seeds, which had the tendency to build song around Christian imagery, or the Four White Dudes Jesus Quartet, not to be confused with Jimmy and the Communion Wafers. Yeah, buddy, I'm choosing the Bad Seeds.
would Bob Dylan be considered the Shakespeare of our time if he was just the, well, Jesus turned the water into wine, the same fucking reference you've heard 1,000 fucking times. Like, would the four black dudes Jesus Quartet ever sing Ice Cube's When I Get to Heaven? Absolutely not, because that's a song that acknowledges that lots of Christians do bad things, and God is not responsible for such. One of my favorite songs ever, actually, which also samples Marvin Gaye, who also used religion interestingly, hence to why people consider What's Going On to be like one of the greatest albums ever, because it actually is. But anything multi-dimensional about Christian belief is often too complex a message for the Christian slop music industry. And how do I fucking know this? Because 1 Timothy 6:10 says that for the love of money is the root of all kinds of evils. And a lot of people responsible for the slop probably do not care about Christ in the slightest, not helping its repetitive nature. And I bring all this bad Christian music up because God Rocks is surprisingly versatile, but falls completely flat with nothing creative or subversive, just banking and exploiting Christ. Now, the team throughout the franchise history could surprisingly emulate any sound they pleased, but with zero originality. Like the Beatles, the Beach Boys, Parliament Funkadelic, the Backstreet Boys, Avril Lavigne even. Look, she's got the tie and everything. But even if they got the sound down, that doesn't mean it stands out in lyricism or themes in the slightest. Like, one of the more notable songs of the God Rocks franchise is The Beat Rocks Do Not Conform, which I can't play, but think like the tune of an early Beatles song, like She Loves You, yeah, 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 all that jazz. These are the lyrics. Think She Loves You. Do not conform any longer to the pattern of this world, but be transformed by the renewing of your mind. Then you will be able to test and approve what God's will is, His good, His pleasing, and perfect will. That is the main chorus. And none of this matches the Beatles' homage melody, and every song is like this. It's an unoriginal sound, spouting biblical terms with zero flow. And if you couldn't tell just by the terminology alone, a lot of the songs aren't even fucking songs. They're just poorly harmonized biblical passages, like word by word. Not even hymns, like actual passages from the Bible. Hymns are not in the Bible for context. Well, why do they make songs that are literally just quoting the Bible? The Bible isn't a fucking songbook. There's zero effort on reconstructing source material into a song. Not that a biblical Beatles homage couldn't work. I mean, like George Harrison of the Beatles released plenty of spiritual material throughout his solo career, which uses many of the same religious terminologies like Lord, peace, hallelujah, God, etc., even if the context isn't Christian specifically. So it's not like a religious Beatles-inspired song couldn't work, considering we have a similar product by a Beatle. But they didn't try and make a religious song, they're only trying to bank off of iconography of recognizable figures and religious identity. There are a handful of musical acts parodied in universe, such as the Beatles, Elvis Presley, the Beach Boys, and the Soul Sisters, and that's it to my knowledge. They couldn't even come up with a rock pun for Elvis, so his name is just Flint Rockley.
Hunka hunka bucket, fuck it.
Now, Elvis actually had lots of overlooked gospel material, so it's not the most illogical inclusion.
Well, it's Rick and Morty time.
That's clearly what got him in Dorbies. But here, his inclusion was clearly not conceived for a love of Elvis or Elvis's overlooked gospel albums. It's just lazy parody humor. The songs just take familiar sounds, stir in some biblical jargon, and they are not creative in the slightest and are consistently atrocious. You know, although for a classic rock-inspired show, it does often refrain from a lot of the bigger, more explicit names like the Rolling Stones or the Doors. You know, not that they were the NWA of their time, but you know, the little edgier ones are obviously not acknowledged because it's a Christian program. There's gonna be no homage homage to "You're a star, fuck a star, fuck a star, fuck a star, fuck a star." Hell, the entire genre was considered satanic at a point, so I guess it is kind of mildly amusing as a result of shifting Christian beliefs in modern culture. But if anyone held a more orthodox Christian approach to rock and roll, I wouldn't even be surprised if this Christian show got banned in Christian households. But this show is only taking influence from classic rock bands and similar genres for bank, and it's insulting. Sure, it's atypical for a 2000s Christian kid show, but you wouldn't expect it, but that doesn't mean it's good. You know, this was like AI-generated plagiarism before such a thing existed, you know, overly relying on minimally transformed references. Hey AI, make a love song about Jesus, but to the tune of 8 days a week, you know. It creates familiar sounds, but also uninteresting sounds, plus uncreative New Testament, etc. schlop. And if you're a music franchise and the music blows ass to this degree, it's a fucking death sentence. Now, in regards to the plots leading to the music, in the first show there's like generic school day adventures, mandatory sports episode, and mandatory alien episode, meaning that it's up to the local high school church band to save the day. And Chip Livingstone, the biggest idiot in the entire class, learns a lesson that you haven't heard 1,000 fucking times already, religious show or not, while playing a bunch of music that isn't creative, interesting, or unique in the slightest. And you know, societies are made out of rocks. You know, types of rocks are pretty essential to construction of facilities. So is like the school they go to partially constructed out of corpses?
Whatever. There you go. I fixed it.
Now eat your broccoli, Nuggy.
I can't tell if this is like a friendly jab at something they love, or like an actual diss joke reference. The rocks aren't even like rock monsters that could help differentiate actual like ground from humans. Like, was there some chemical accident or evil magic here? I don't get it. This world makes no sense. The world building is so bad it actually makes you appreciate VeggieTales' simplicity, but pretty prominent rules of things that don't happen. It's also worth noting that on occasion, actual biblical figures are depicted, and they're humans, which just raises more questions. So like, Christ himself wasn't a rock in this universe? VeggieTales had a pretty strict rule in the simple world building of choosing not to portray biblical figures, to not raise questions or not create a blasphemous portrayal. Of course, the vegetables portray figures, but that's acting in universe, like Muppet Christmas Carol or something. Did like all the humans die, and then once sentient rocks took over society, they started believing in human religion? Now, you could say I'm nitpicking, but VeggieTales managed to have a simplistic world with big rules of thumb as to what doesn't happen. So VeggieTales doesn't create logic errors, and considering they're blatantly ripping it off, there's no excuse for a world this illogical.
Cool pics. The Kamuka Muka surfing contest was so spiking.
You are awesome, Gem. Awesome.
Thanks, guys.
I guess I wouldn't be complaining if this was good, but still. Now, as I mentioned, there's like an interstitial episode, that's what I'm calling it, because it sort of serves as a formatting transition between the first and second series. When the band is seen in live action for the first time, Chip is hallucinating.
Chip, what's going on with you? You're acting really strange. It's like you're somebody else.
You got that right.
But this episode identifies the exact point in the series' history when the original anonymous band was replaced. Which brings us to God Rocks Bible Tunes, which if you know of this franchise, you most likely know of this show. It had 2 full seasons, and these character designs would become stable for promotional material. This is the most famous interpretation of these very obscure characters. Now, being in 2D, the characters actually don't look like turds this time. They look like dildos. Fantastic. Bros think they gem reviews. but that doesn't mean their concept designs are exactly stellar. Thankfully, the color palette is improved, which may or may not have been the fault of the CG software used previously, whatever that was. But this show would easily be a downgrade despite having more content, more room to experiment, more time to improve, etc. Switching to an 11-minute episode format intertwined with live-action segments of the band members, which are horribly acted, and I mean horribly acted on bad green screens.
We are your humble servants. We are not worthy to kiss your feet.
Put those grippers away!
But this 11-minute format, I think, would worsen the overall storytelling from limited time. This is where the series lost any redeeming qualities that it had and just became generic adventures or competitions, repeating biblical buzzwords. Like, the original series was just generic slop, but this second series is just even worse slop, like significantly less watchable slop.
What are you doing? Putting on love? You're not putting on love. You're putting on the ugliest shirt I've ever seen.
Spread like wildfire, but this one ain't bullshit. I know that you two are having a gay relationship.
Hell, there's even a Wizard of Oz spoof with Christ lazily slapped into it, which is titled The Whistle of Odd. Even though The Wizard of Oz is public domain, they didn't need to change the title to qualify it under parody law. Which, you guessed it, there's no Wicked Witch of the West equivalent, because that would be witchcraft, and the Whizzle is not technically a wizard because they said so. Racist! I'll help you be racist. I'll teach you the proper tricks to become racist. Know the slurs you've got to know. Ooh, I'll show you what paint to wear, how to hate niggas. The 22-minute batch of 4 episodes had a unique beginning, middle, and end, and took advantage of an established world. Here, things like the secondary cast, reoccurring locations are still there on occasion, but are heavily underutilized. It's such a downgrade in development. Look, the world building in the previous show was really generic and questionable, but this hardly has any world building, so it's infinitely worse. The exclusion of Chip's family being the most prominent exclusion. They were pretty prominent secondary characters in the original show, but kind of got the axe for the soft reboot. Chip's mom and sister, who frequently appeared in the original show, only show up like twice maximum in Bible tunes to my knowledge.
I have to say is that I do feel like a terrible mother. This is where it started. The God Rocks first family, the Livingstones, and here's Chip. And I'm his mother, Ruby, in the world of animation. And when last did I see you, son?
Months.
It's terrible.
Years.
Absolutely terrible.
Cannot believe it.
But Chip's dad is like a completely mysterious lost character. Ooh.
He's black?
This show teaches kids how to steal. Yeah, teach kids how to steal. It's like the Wiggles all over again. Bet you were watching the Wiggles so they got into the show. And it's a segment of Rock Kids TV, which also sucks. The show would have ripped off the Fresh Meat Dam, but it came first.
Yeah, despite getting like a full show on television with full seasons, there's clearly a budget cut. Either that or they were just lazy as shit. Like, church hardly even appears despite that being a primary setting given the nature of the show. The secondary cast now feel like guest characters.
I never knew you were a shepherd, Mr. Rockley.
Just call me Flint, Stone.
Hell, even Pastor Jasper, a pretty essential character for a show of this nature, doesn't appear too consistently. Like, if you figured the characters needed help and they'd consult him or something, but no, I gotta run a retraction. I gotta stick with the facts. The closest thing there are to antagonists throughout the franchise are Org, a generic bully, and Minibot, a generic sci-fi villain.
Those Godrocks won't know what to do. Too bad, Godrocks. Boo-hoo. No more concert fun for you.
The series feels more desperate to appeal to parents rather than children trying to exploit their approval for merchandising reasons rather than kids. because a lot of the Bible-Toon stories are just generic adventures while repeating biblical terminology. Most episodes just have a favorite buzzword and they keep shouting whatever that word is.
Rejoice in the Lord always. It says right here, rejoice in the Lord always. Rejoice! Rejoice.
Rejoice in the Lord always. Rejoice.
We will rejoice, sir.
We will rejoice.
Let's hear some rejoicing. Just remember to rejoice in the Lord always. Rejoice! Is everyone rejoicing?
I will rejoice.
I will say it again. Rejoice. Rejoice.
Rejoice.
Rejoice in the Lord always.
Rejoice.
Rejoice in him. Rejoice in the Lord always.
Rejoice!
Are you stupid? Do you not know what this biblical term is?
Family.
We're here because, Christ changed our lives, and it's important to know that yourself.
Jesus has so changed my life.
Like, hey parents, we said the fucking live thing, pay for our show, bitch. There are hardly plots in the main story sections of the Bible-Toons 11-minute variety episodes. Yeah, most variety shows aren't 11 minutes because it's a variety show. Why divide the segments by 11 as opposed to 22 so you could multiply the segments? Which would leave less time for like intro and credits and whatnot. Hell, sometimes the episodes are so undercooked, they just cut to like live action music videos, which are seemingly also just repackaged and lazily repurposed.
Now this is a story all about how my frown got flipped, turned upside down, and I'd like to take a minute, don't go too far. I'm gonna tell you a little story about how I got these scars. My daddy was a drinker. My wife, she liked to gamble. My dog's a plastic surgeon.
After the 2 seasons of Bible-Toons, there were 3 30-minute specials direct-to-video, but I'm sure aired on TV at some point. Both an Easter and Christmas special, as well as a space special.
Here comes the Admiral.
Good day, Star Cadets. Welcome to Mission Control. I'm Admiral Roger John. Bitch, I'm the villain.
Hell, there was even like a convention or something themed around the Easter special, God Rocks Easterific. Promotional material is on the official YouTube channel as early as 2010, so I'm gonna assume it was somewhere in 2010, but we don't know where it was hosted. Probably just an excuse to sell DVDs. One of the main characters of the Easter special is like Jesus' tombstone.
Look, little bird.
Gracie. My name's Gracie, and I'm a sparrow.
Look, Gracie. Tombs are dark, cold places. And you're just a kid. You don't belong here.
Yeah, because tombstones are rocks, they decided to make Christ's tomb sentient? Is that biblical retconning? Is that blasphemous? I don't get that. What the hell? But God Rocks Bible-Toons would spawn a spin-off of sorts, Bible-Toons Beat Town, which is a compilation miniseries repackaging the live-action skits and the musical numbers, only lasting for 3 episodes exclusive to TV. Now, it's worth noting that shows that had musical numbers in the VHS era also had song compilation cassettes. Gaither's Pond had a song compilation I'd failed to mention previously. Of course, VeggieTales did this. Hell, even Peppermint Park had one. Despite the Bible-Toons iteration coming out past the VHS era. And there was also a live concert in Miami DVD released in 2010.
Rock Kids TV is on the air.
But the next franchise iteration would debut in 2013, Rock Kids TV, a variety show which was produced by the IP owners Tricord Media and is also presumably subject to mostly lost media, which is fairly common for religious shows of this nature. I do not believe a single full episode of Rock Kids TV has survived, which could be attributed to only having 1 season between 2012 to 13, and airing Saturday mornings on networks affiliated with the Trinity Broadcasting Network That includes Smile of a Child, as it is a subsidiary, meaning that it's most likely nobody tuned into this because Smile was a dying network by 13. Although it was apparently free to watch on some random Christian website at a point.
But, you know, if you don't have CTS, you don't get the station, you can watch it online. That's the great thing about the internet, that it can be available 24/7. If you go to crossroads360.com, and then you find the big button there called Kids Space, and that's one of the channels on our new crossroads360.com, and you will enjoy all the episodes right there.
One of the main selling points of the show was its featuring of the God Rocks band, both in animation and live action. Stacy, aka Jem herself, was also presumably a host of a discussion segment, meaning that she probably appeared as both herself and Jem in live action. But what completely shocked me was this.
We really hope that we can help raise the next generation of Christian kids that will know their faith, know what they believe, and know how to live it in front of the eyes of a watching world.
The involvement of Phil Vischer himself, aka the literal creator of VeggieTales, was involved in one of the reoccurring segments, even though they were fucking squishing his tomatoes like 3 shows ago. So I guess the franchise executives just gave up trying to rip him off and hired him. But if you're a huge fan of Vischer's work, you may know of his other series, Buck Denver Asks What's in the Bible, aka What's in the Bible, or just Buck Denver. And his segments are presumably reused here. And you know what? It's actually pretty energetic and confident, unlike the majority of religious programming, as he is the master of religious programming.
Oh, I know what it is.
Oh, hi Clive and Ian.
I know what it is.
Introduce yourself first.
I'm Ian.
And I'm Clive, his brother.
And I know what it is.
All right, Ian, tell us, what is the best-selling, most influential book of all time?
Pat the Bunny.
Hey, Ian.
Good night, Moon.
And it even featured a reoccurring musical duo, the fabulous Bentley brothers, played by Rhett and Link of all people.
Genesis begins it all, and appropriately it's at the beginning of the Bible.
This presumably confirms that Phil Vischer has seen Nerd vs. Geek rap battle, so based.
Hallelujah, look what God can do. Hallelujah, his promises come true.
But like I said, I can't find a single episode of the show besides out-of-context clips, which really isn't a disadvantage as a variety show. But with the end of this show after one season in 2013, this was truly the day the God Rocks franchise died. It wasn't completely inactive, but this was basically the end, and I doubt anybody that grew up with the original or Bible tunes was still watching at this point.
Hi everyone, thank you for watching the first episode of The Little Farmette. I'm Cheryl.
I'm Todd.
And we're excited to bring you guys along on our adventures as we grow our homestead.
But the Nielsen's, now raising a family, went back into the public eye in 2018 onward, with a brand called The Little Farmette, and they even had a YouTube channel consisting of vlogs of their family farm. But Cheryl's also publishing a children's book now available for pre-order, as of writing, Stan of the Green Stables. There is currently no illustrator credit, assuming she didn't do that herself, so I really hope a human was involved in drawing these little piggies. But also, in 2018, the franchise would return without Cheryl Stacy Nielsen, the true patriarch of the God Rocks brand. The franchise would return on a streaming service called Minnow Plus. The only thing that God Rocks Dance Craze has to do with the franchise is that it reuses the original theme song and has the main duo of Chip and Crystal. So one character has the same name, so that's how it's a reboot? They didn't even name the token girl Jem. It's just children's themed aerobics with some like biblical passages thrown in there for good measure. God Rocks is only slapped on whatever the hell this is for brand recognition. But in 2023 and 4, 12 compilation extended plays would widely digitally release, which makes up most if not all the songs of the franchise that got a album release previously. I'm sure there's some exclusive to the show I haven't identified. So at least in regards to the songs, the bread bread and butter, I'd hope, because it's a band show. They're at least willing to preserve the music officially, which is commendable.
Drop the drum! It's okay! I got that shit!
But in 2024, Bible Tunes would also become available on a streaming service named Vision Video, and presumably would also be HD remastered. Except the Vision Video versions cut out all the live action bits. This HD remaster / redistribution being half-hour compilations consisting of 6 main story segments each. And there's also a presumably new intro remix and other new interstitial animations rendered for this remaster. The characters are silent throughout the new content. So I don't know if it was a copyright issue or Vision Video just disliked the even shittier live action bits. The franchise is an atrocious industry plant that eventually backfired, and that is not surprising in the slightest. Nothing is creative or funny. It doesn't teach lessons in distinguishable or easily communicatable ways for its target demographic. It treats kids like idiots by waving typical biblical buzzwords in their face. It's forgotten for a reason despite years of commercial success. But it's pretty fucking obvious that it didn't earn this commercial success. And I think it's safe to say that there's 2 types of VeggieTales ripoffs. There's Gaither's Ponds, where it was obviously only conceived for capitalizing on VeggieTales' market expansion, a Christian show for the sake of making a Christian show with CG, or a Dorby's, where it's just pretty fucking obvious it's ripping off VeggieTales. I think it's pretty safe to say God Rocks is a Dorby's. But what if I told you there was another show adjacent to a Dorby's type VeggieTales ripoff, but not to capitalize on Christian television animation for children? You'd get Was, and Bot. You see, usually it's the other way around. Lots of bad Christian children's media is just a ripoff of something else with Christ nailed into it. But Was, and Bot is a one-of-a-kind VeggieTales ripoff. This is for what if they took the Christ out of VeggieTales, which I guess isn't surprising considering VeggieTales' appeal to non-Christian audiences, but I can't say I've seen any other show resort to this strategy. Was, and Bot was made by Aeroscope Entertainment, which also made an Egyptian Arabic dub of VeggieTales between 1998 to 2005. However, it has not been legally confirmed that it was ever authorized by Big Idea, the makers of VeggieTales, so it was most likely a bootleg dub. And considering that this company was most likely already infringing on the copyright for VeggieTales, they just decided to make their own VeggieTales. And they got the animation style down as best they could, at least for the budget.
George Bush doesn't care about black people.
The character designs are lawsuit-level ripoffs, most notably copying the facial expression structure, but on top of VeggieTales, it's also a Toy Story ripoff. VeggieTales and Toy Story obviously didn't invent CGI animation, but it's safe to say for their respective release dates, they absolutely perfected it in their respective fields. And why did they star vegetables and toys? Well, because of technical limitations. Phil Vischer chose the series to focus on vegetables of all things due to the lack of having limbs and not promoting junk food, his original idea being candy bars. And Toy Story focusing on toys because of the texturing limitations at the time being more resemblant of plastic. Look, I love the first 2 Toy Stories to death, but the first movie especially, a lot of the texturing does not hold up. I don't know if you watched like stupid-ass cartoon theory videos in 2015, but one of the big ones was, why doesn't Andy have a dad? Well, the actual reason is because the humans were expensive to render, hence to why Toy Story didn't focus on humans and focused on plastic figures of humans. So Was, and Bot saw both Toy Story and VeggieTales sparing use of limited technology and capitalize on both. This show apparently had an English version of season 2, but that could just be a rumor, I don't know. I'm just working off what I can infer from Arabic episodes still in speculation, the show being majority lost media. Now, instead of vegetables, it stars wooden dolls of people. hence to why they have Caucasian skin colors. Except for this Bob ripoff, I don't know if he's supposed to be like a tomato or like a clay ball or something. And now, again, I didn't grow up with VeggieTales, I'm no expert, but I do know one thing. The 1996 Christmas special, The Toy That Saved Christmas, features a doll character named Buzzsaw Louie.
I did. That's not what Christmas is about.
It's not?
No, Christmas isn't about whining and begging for more toys.
Well, then what is it about?
So it's entirely possible that they saw this one character resembling a doll, which I guess is technically a human in VeggieTales, which was against the rules. So there's no even consideration of basic human anatomy. Like, they're humans, they should have arms and legs, if not mistaken. Or I guess humanoid dolls in this context. Now, not that Toy Story invented the concept of what if toys came to life. To my knowledge, the first instance of that hypothetical would be the short film from 1933, The Mascot, which is public domain to my knowledge and free on YouTube. It's actually a really good multi-medium watch, highly recommend. So like the wooden dolls are just in like a movie theater, which again, I don't know if this is some Egyptian cultural thing I can't find on Google. And in the wee hours of the morning, when all the movie screenings are over, they come to life and decide to use the movie theater as like a play stage and reenact the relevant movie. So I guess it's kind of like a set in a theater Muppet Show type variety show. And it being Arabic, you may assume it teaches the morals of Islam. And not that I can understand the show, but to my knowledge, there is no Islam or Christianity. A lot of the episodes I could get my hands on, but I couldn't understand. I assume there's like makeup segments, which leads me to believe a lot of the morals of the episodes weren't related to any religion, but just, you know, love and compassion and all that, you know, nothing exclusive to religion. This show was by far the most requested VeggieTales ripoff. And there's really not much to talk about, mainly because I can't understand it and it's hardly documented. So yeah, so you can quite literally judge a book by its cover in this case. It's just a VeggieTales ripoff without Christ. But what if I told you this wasn't the only VeggieTales / Toy Story simultaneous ripoff? Well, let me tell you about Storyteller Cafe.
Let's go! Join in on all the fun with 1G's very inquisitive, very playful, very opinionated cartoons.
You gotta listen to me. A story from the book? All right.
Storyteller Cafe.
Now this is a Gaither's Pond situation where it's obvious it was conceived for the market and not 3/4 for the Lord. Finding any information on the show is very difficult because it's completely obscured by a dining location, Storyteller's Cafe in Disneyland Cali. There's only one little difference in the spelling, but damn it does that Disney attraction make finding the show difficult. It had 9 episodes. Thank you, strange website that hasn't been updated since 2006 and somehow still up. The show also released in 1999, the same year as Toy Story 2. So, it's a bunch of toys in a cafe, literally just called cafe? Like, what are they, toys in a restaurant basement? Or did the owner's family live here? The restaurant setting isn't really important to anything, but like, why couldn't this be a house? It's practically a house, it's like a basement. There's no fucking context to anything in this show. Imagine Toy Story without Andy. Okay, imagine Toy Story without any context to the toys' owners. There's like a mom and a dad and a son who are anonymous, and like I guess the son struggles with religious beliefs, I guess. But it's like a Christian-owned coffee shop, and then the toys are interested in Christianity, I guess. Oh look, there's like a cowboy yo-yo or hockey puck. I don't know what the fuck this is supposed to be. With arms and legs, definitely not Woody.
Ugh, long day of shrimpo hunting. I can't wait to go to bed.
George Bush doesn't care about black people.
Oh, look, there's an Elvis lion because Lion, King of Rock and Roll, which Animal Crossing also did roughly around the same time.
I live in Ruckersville, Virginia, and I is 21 years old.
Each episode involves one of the characters doing something dumb, then Pete, who is like a G.I. Joe pilot.
Go, Pete! Yahoo! Come on, everyone! Let's have some fun!
Starts telling a Bible story relevant to whatever conflict just occurred. And then once the Bible story starts getting recited, the toys use like a laptop as a green screen and imagine themselves in Bible stories. Except one thing that like completely baffles me about the show is that the Bible is referred to as just the book. The book of what? Matthew, Mark, Luke, John, who? The show feels oddly embarrassed to be Christian, which, you know, is a pretty bad thing for a Christian show to be. Like, it's like they saw, like, VeggieTales' general audience appeal in spite of religion.
We love it! Yeah!
Shut up, bitch!
Except, lots of people didn't care that VeggieTales was a Christian show because it was well made beyond that.
This here is Larry the Cucumber.
The book is full of great stories.
Yeah, and they're all true, too.
It's a little sad, though, that we can't go to church and celebrate.
The entire show is like, yo, dudes, you want to learn about Mary Magdalene? But no, we're not reading the Bible.
This is the Bible.
You question the words of the mighty Jimmy?
Oh, here it is. It should take you and your 3 sons 120 years to build the ark.
Like, I've never seen, like, a Christian show where they read the Bible, refuse to be acknowledged as the Bible.
Hey, who ate my double-chunk chocolate cookie?
The formatting also just makes no sense. Like, the characters don't know the Bible story. That's kind of the point. They're learning the Bible story with the audience, but they're somehow also reenacting it. VeggieTales also reenacted Bible stories, but that was with the cast members recast as biblical figures. So maybe if they did something original with a combination of biblical reenactments and original conflicts, much like VeggieTales, which used this sparingly, it just wouldn't be a logic error. Like, how are you gonna know what to do if you don't know the end of the Bible story? None of this makes any sense. And it's not funny either, so I can't excuse it. And of course it has to be shitty CG because it's a VeggieTales ripoff and VeggieTales was innovative for CG. In addition to this, the walls are decorated with a boy sitting quietly on a tree reading a book from a quote from Geoffrey Chaucer saying, "The life is so short, the craft so long to learn." The restaurant is presented in a style of buffet restaurants where guests can enjoy a variety of food available for them to pick up. Due to its Californian folklore theme, the decorations of the Californian folklore are also displayed throughout the facility, mostly depicting artwork of early Californian settlers. Besides being themed after Californian folklore, some paintings are themed after literature set in California, such as the celebrated jumping frog of Calaveras County or Island of the Blue Dolphins. Items available on the buffet vary during breakfast, lunch, and dinner hours. Thank you, Storytellers Cafe. Oh, wait.
If she gets into that car, that may be the last time you'll see Jenny. I'm McGruff, the crime dog. See those kids? Every day in this country, 60 kids.
Oh, beware of ghoulies and ghosties and long-legged beasties and things that go bump in the night.
About the place here? I think it's a fun place for kids. How's it feel to have kids love you?
Oh, that's the nicest feeling in the world. And I love the kids, too. They're all my friends. Didn't mean to bump you there.
Okay.
Can I bite your head?
No.
It's a pleasure to meet you, Wiley.
Pleasure to meet you, too.
You've got it on your own there. Very good. And that was our last question. And Red Team, you are the winner. Let's hear it for the Red Team. All right. Very good. Red Team's a big winner today.
Sheriff Dawn.
Yes, Marty.
I think Marty wants to be sure and mention the Mailbox Club.
Oh,
that's right, Ron. We want all the kids to write in and join on the Mailbox Club. That's right, but there's 3 things they need to send us, Marty. Their name, their address, and their age. And they can join us, and they can get a lot of neat stories and lessons, and it'll be a lot of fun to read.
Ventriloquism is arguably one of the scariest forms of puppetry, and I think I found the scariest ventriloquist dummy, not necessarily for the design, but rather the puppeteer.
Operator, may
I help you? Hello, operator. Can you tell me how to get Sesame Street?
Take the fight out of crime.
Boys and girls able to have children by about the age of 12 years of age.
Deceive you the same as he's deceived you all along. We need to go. Who's going to be with the children?
Daddy, can we see you again?
Let's just say a prayer. Okay, let's pray. Let's say a prayer. Thank you, Jesus. Thank you.
And as it is appointed unto men once to die, but after this the judgment.
The modern art of ventriloquism is a re-intention of its own original purpose. I love jello pudding pop. Shut up, you knuckle fuck. Ventriloquism as an art form didn't start until the late 1700s as a comedy act, but not until the 1800s as a comedy act in theaters. But rather, it was a biblical practice being representative of apparent spirits of the departed, with the ventriloquist interpreting the words of the spirit themselves, which eventually became used for comedy reasons, the main joke being that one person was controlling two voices. The realism originally intended to represent the departed was used to rather create the illusion of another actor. It is often debated amongst varying interpretations of Christianity if the practice would qualify as witchcraft or not. During the vaudeville era, which spans from about the 1890s to the 1930s, it became industry standard for the ventriloquist dummies to have a fully functioning mouth, which only bettered the illusion of a second voice. But at the end of vaudeville and the beginning of cinema, the most famous ventriloquial duo of all time, Edgar Bergen and Charlie McCarthy, rose to fame. Edgar also had another notable character, Mortimer Sneed. Edgar Bergen also passed away in 1978, meaning that he was around for the end of vaudeville, the beginning of film, and the beginning of a new era of puppetry. However, with 50s and 60s children's entertainment, string puppets became the new norm, but the success of Sesame Street in 1969 kind of led the way for shifting industry standards of characters with Muppet-like attributes, which made ventriloquism even more outdated. By the 80s and 90s, they were often portrayed in horror contexts, even in children's media like Slappy from Goosebumps or the Family Matters dummy duology of episodes. But the late Edgar Bergen actually had some involvement in the new era of puppetry, having some involvement with the Muppets, the new industry standard. His daughter Candace appeared in the first season of The Muppet Show.
It's The Muppet Show with our special guest star, Miss Candace Bergen. Woo!
But the late Edgar Bergen and Charlie McCarthy appeared in The Muppet Show Season 2.
It's The Muppet Show with our very special guest star, Mr. Edgar Bergen.
Which is an interesting watch with historical contexts because it's technically a crossover episode between two puppet acts. Edgar and Charlie also made a cameo in the Muppet movie.
You're not gonna believe who the winner is, folks. Oh, come now, Charlie. It's their movie. Oh, so 'tis.
Which it was only appropriate to include a puppetry legend in a film that broke new grounds for puppetry. So for children's entertainment, at least for what I can infer, what remains of ventriloquism was kind of outdated by the 50s. It was more of a talk show sketch act, which was targeted more by adults. But by the 80s and 90s, it truly went back to its roots of being representative of the departed, with the dummies often being associated in horrific contexts. Except you can only build a human out of wood so accurately that it guarantees the uncanny valley. But in the 80s, a man named Ronald William Brown began to take his rise to notoriety. Brown began to take on Christian puppetry as an entertainment for a career path, presumably being a notable local Christian talent in the Largo, Florida area. A notable enough talent to be included as a cast member on Joy Junction, an obscure Christian show for the non-profit Christian television network based in Largo, Florida. Joy Junction was a Christian game show intertwined with scripted segments of the host teaching biblical lessons. Joy Junction is a show so obscure that it's not even documented what year it came out. It's speculated to have been released in the early to mid-80s, airing for multiple years. Most of what is known about the show is from surviving TV recordings reposted onto the internet. There was some merchandise of the show, which was given out on the show, which reminded kids to put God first, and there was a song collection cassette, which apparently released in 1985, meaning the show probably came out before that cassette, but it could have also been a Season 1 release tie-in. In fact, some ads for VHS tapes exist, but not indicating the premiere, but the VHS tapes were available through $12 donations.
And you'll receive 2 specially selected programs on each tape. Specify whether you want Joy Junction or Becky's Barn, and you don't have to camp out at the post office. Hey, look, it's here!
This ad also ties into another highly obscure Christian lost public access show called Becky's Barn, but Becky's Barn's release date is also undetermined, so it's a dead end. The logo for the show and the synthwave for the Christian television network is another solid indicator of the consensus of the early to mid-80s airtime. The show is both rare and obscure, and the following is mostly just observations from my personal speculation and what we can infer from minimal surviving footage. YouTube user Danny D is mostly responsible for archiving a portion of the series, as well as the previously mentioned Cringe Vision, who launched the show into infamy, along with other similar shows of its category, including the previously discussed Peppermint Park.
Oh, look at that one. That one's really nice.
Yeah.
With each episode focusing on the topic of a moral, whether the moral was exclusive to Christianity or not was not an issue. Simply, the biblical connections of each lesson were applied to maintain the primary aspect of biblical conversation. The games on most instances are tied to the biblical conversation, and the guests were children, meaning they had to be both safe, educational, and affordable, meaning the games were very boring. Why watch moving hot dogs with words to biblical verses written on them when you could change the channel to Nick with people getting covered in slime? You know, assuming you had Nickelodeon, or were even allowed to watch it, considering you're stuck watching Joy Junction. But in between the game show segments, we would see the residents of the fictional western town of Joy Junction engaging in biblical conversation. The intro is also very late 70s, early 80s in sound, and is a complete ripoff of the chorus of the 1971 song Joy to the World by Three Dog Night.
Joy to the world, all the boys and girls.
To the world, all the boys and girls now.
Want a ride? If someone you don't know offers you a ride, you're out of there fast. Run to a school, someone you know, or a police officer. Children, be aware.
Joy Junction is the place to be. Joy for you and me.
To the fishes in the deep blue sea. Joy to you and me.
So wait, what the fuck happened to Thou Shall Not Steal? The main host was Sheriff Don, who'd introduce the guest and interlude all the sections of the show. Sheriff Don would often conversate with Whittler Dan to provide his input on the biblical topic, as well as a character who I assume was added later, Deputy Les, who served a supporting role of a conversationalist. Whittler Dan's actor David Bradley, who also played another character with minimal remaining appearances, Jungle Bob, who has a fake Australian accent and would presumably showcase animals on the show, like ferrets, my favorite jungle animal.
The smell, so usually he licks something before he bites.
Professor Claude Hopper was the mad scientist who would bring in inventions which contributed to the lesson. Papillon, a fake French artist who would illustrate the moral of the episode, typically in a metaphorical context. Pastor Wilson, that role writes itself. And there were two main reoccurring soloist singers that would appear on the show named Sarah Eden and Darcy Wilson. When I began to first take a deep dive into the series, one thing that caught my attention was this Muppet character. I say Muppet because of the design's attributes, but this character, from observations of remaining footage, is presumably a lost character within a mostly lost show. It's the only Muppet character in this show, and I assume the character only has one appearance, but the scene of his appearance is used in the intro to multiple episodes. So I decided to ask Danny D if he knew about the character, and not even the largest archivist of the series know who this Muppet ripoff is. So this is essentially a lost character in a lost show. There's also a little girl who's playing an old lady who would appear sometimes, typically if the concept's related to responsive anger.
To block the sidewalk all day.
Well, I'm sorry, ma'am.
Madame, I was showing the sheriff here how we have a close relationship with Jesus Christ.
Oh, come on! Get real!
There were also animated segments of the character Jot the Dot, which were repurposed Christian shorts around 4 minutes that were originally made from 1965 to 1974, with a brief revival that lasted from 1980 to 1981, which is a solid indicator to when Joy Junction came out, assuming the revival shorts as well as the original shorts were used throughout the show. The character kind of reminds me of Spot, the retired 7-Up mascot. Jot the Dot's animation is incredibly minimalistic, especially with the geometric simplicity of the character designs, but for random Christian shorts from 1965 to 1981, I actually expected a lot worse animation. But this brings us to the most notable segment of the show, Ron and Marty, with a ventriloquist act performed by Ron demonstrating a father-son dynamic with Marty within the biblical conversation. The most infamous of these segments is where he talks about porn, originally uncovered by Cringe Vision.
I wondered why they were doing that. Well, why were they doing it? Well, they said, Marty, come over here and take a look at our pictures. So I walked on over there and I took a look. And do you know what it was? What was it, Marty? Well, it was in Arizona, I'll tell you that right now. Ron, they were looking at some dirty pictures and they wanted me to look too. Well, Marty, what did you do? Well, I said, look, guys, I like you a lot and I want to play with you, but I can't look at those pictures. I just can't do it. Well, what did they say, Marty? They said, oh, Marty, come on. Your parents are in the house. No one will see. Well, what did you say? I said, that may be true, but I know someone who will see, and that's God. That's right, Marty. You know, that kind of reminds me of a verse I'm thinking of in the Bible that's found in 2 Timothy 2:22. And it says that you should run away from anything that will give you evil thoughts. And as your companions, you should have friends who have pure and clean thoughts and will only give you good ideas. Well, you know what I decided to do? What's that, Marty? I decided to turn around and go right back home. Well, Marty, I'm real proud of you for that. And some of the kids were kind of laughing at me, too. Well, that's okay, Marty. I think they will respect you for your opinion. And, you know, I'm glad you weren't wishy-washy. I'm glad you remained firm in your belief that looking at those kind of things is wrong.
So the show followed these game show segments intertwined with the segments of these characters. And for the standards of public access 80s Christian television, I assume it was successful because there are reports of the show being syndicated from 1993 to 2005 on other networks. And looking at old TV recordings, I think there is some evidence to back this up because I believe some segments were added later. That looks very early 2000s. And in recordings, we can also see snippets of other shows that kind of look CG. I would personally assume, since it was apparently syndicated so much that there had to have been at least 100 episodes. 100 was the magic number for syndication, which mathematically allows 20 weeks worth of weekday reruns. And if you want your show to be heavily reran to profit, you gotta have a ton of content to keep the viewers interested. Like, what's the fun in seeing the same SpongeBob episode you've already seen 3 times in the past month? Surely, if it was syndicated for a long time, there had to have been more than around 39 recovered episodes. So surely the remaining episodes, if not destroyed, have to exist in network archives. People often theorize that the master copies were destroyed, and if they still exist, they will most likely never be officially released, assuming there's even a proper IP holder for the show. And the reason why people assume it's either been destroyed or will never be released, because in 2013, Ronald William Brown was charged with possession of child pornography and conspiracy to kidnap and murder a child. So Lord Almighty cut him down. But what about in between Joy Junction and the charges? Well, in 1991, he started a business called Puppets Plus, meaning that Joy Junction probably ended before 1991. But Brown continued to make a living off of Christian puppetry, and as an entertainer, archives of his website display local Florida establishments as clients. Most of his puppetry is not documented. There's not a whole lot of pictures of him in existence. But in 1998, he was pulled over for a simple traffic violation, but it was noted that he had a pair of boys' underwear shoved in between the car seats. He was let off the hook because he was claimed it was for one of his puppets. But in his local community before the charges, I assume his reputation somewhat shifted, or was at least presumably damaged. Although he was a local notable talent, talented enough to be on public access television, and locally puppeteer for a living. There were also reports of Brown driving kids to church and throwing pizza parties at his house. However, no arrest or investigation was ever made because all he did was drive children and give children pizza, presumably consensually, otherwise they'd have a good reason to launch an investigation. So I guess it depended on which of his neighbors you were talking to. You were either talking about this notable local talent, or this creepy weird guy. But how did Brown get caught? Well, the internet. Incorporating the internet to fulfill his horrid desires was the tragic flaw in fulfilling his plan. The man clearly had a plan, and every criminal has a motivation. Why become a puppeteer? To be around children, and an excuse to buy puppet proportion clothing, which could also fit a child. Now, it's not known how or why he was brought on to the show, but it can be assumed that it was because of local talent, but he never tried to make like his own show or anything on mainstream television. That would be too high profile. And he never reprised his role as Ron and Marty either. If he wanted to continue his intentions, he clearly desired a low profile position. It's not detailed if he actually murdered or sexually assaulted any children, but he did have to be reliant on others with less of a reputation, and he found ways to receive distributed illegal material, mainly through the internet. But one of the distributors, Michael Arnett, was caught and investigation launched on his clients, one of which was Brown, who used the alias UE Lime in Yahoo chat logs. And in these Yahoo chat logs, Brown can be seen expressing disturbing fantasies of sexual assault and cannibalism of children. And I guess Brown didn't consider the possibility of tracking regardless of having an alternate alias. The UE Lime alias was also used on a gay necrophilia website called cutedeadguys.net, in which his comments are available through archives on this website. And for some reason, he put a correct state location on his profile. The online activity was deemed enough for an investigation and a subsequent arrest. Summarizing police reports and court documents, upon his house being raided, large quantities of illegal imagery on any media you can imagine, books about serial killers and cannibals, a blow-up sex doll with children's clothing on it, and a journal of desires dated back to 1978, and a missing child's poster were even found in his house. Some of the children's corpses within the imagery were even identified and connected to other cases in other states. This means that the unspeakable things were most likely going through his head throughout all the appearances on Joy Junction. Joy Junction seems harmless enough, but it's not a favorable watch because knowing what we know now, we can fill in the blanks as to what was most likely going through Brown's head.
Oh, that was a great game, guys. Sarah, I'm glad to see you sitting there because I wanted to ask you a question. You know, you are a really great singer, you know, but I was wondering about something. Have you ever thought of giving up, you know, throwing in the towel?
Well, that depends on how many times
Do you know what it was? What was it, Marty? Well, it was in Arizona, I'll tell you that right now. Ron, they were looking at some dirty pictures and they wanted me to look too.
Ronald Brown faces child porn charges along with accusations that he planned to kidnap, dismember, and eat a child.
This means he'd been conducting schemes to get close to children, presumably his entire adult life. Brown received a 20-year prison sentence with restrictions to the internet access and heavy supervision after the sentence. Brown was later suspected of being involved in another Christian television show, TV8 Kids Fun Fest, aka Pink Morning Cartoon.
To see if it was spring, everything's coming up spring. Flowers grow high, flowers grow low, butterflies said, well, it's time to go. It
was in Arizona, I'll tell you that right now.
But that was disproven and a coincidence. It was Ella Flowers, not Ronald Brown. But it was a reasonable thing to suspect Brown's involvement because Brown had a very high-pitched voice, and women typically have higher-pitched voices, and it turns out it was a female singer. But the whereabouts of Joy Junction is entirely a mystery, and unless more copies of episodes are recovered, it's lost to the sands of time, as well as pretty much everyone involved. Hence to why people often assume master copies from the syndication were destroyed, and if they weren't destroyed, they're gonna be locked up for a long time, much like how Brown was. But Marty, assuming he was confiscated by the feds, he's probably gonna be locked up for a long time too. If Marty even exists. creepy religious kid show made by a cult I escaped from by a user who wishes to remain anonymous. I know the title sounds very clickbaity, but I assure you every word of it is true, and what I'm describing is real. I just know it is. The cult in question is called the Family International, or TFI. I grew up in Huntington Beach, which funnily enough is where the culture started. What I know for a fact, the show followed a sheep, possibly named something biblical, as they encountered problems. The show was in the style of Sesame Street, with puppets and actors with small animated segments. Standard kid show affairs, right? Well, the problems encountered dove into disturbing subject matter. One segment I recall had the sheep talking to a little boy who had said all he wanted was to serve Jesus in all ways he could, with the sheep saying to the little boy, "Give his body to the church," with an animated Jesus standing next to what I recall being children wearing little clothing. The show, from what I remember, appeared to have been made in the 80s judging by the camera quality, but I grew up in the 90s and saw these at only 4 years old, so that puts us at 1994 for my earliest recollection of it. Some of the kids within our group were born in the 80s and they had seen these too, so that puts a possible start date as late as 1985 to 1989, but I could be wrong. The show came on VHS, we had hundreds stored away on church property. If this proves the existence of hundreds of episodes, or just means that there are multiple copies of the same episode, is unknown. The user's theories state that information is likely scarce for 2 reasons. It's either been scrubbed to save the reputation or was produced by the cult with no release outside of it, so obviously no documentation. I also believe that the actress who voiced Sheep was a gospel singer who sang in numerous music videos for the cult dating back to the 70s, which also leads me to believe it had musical segments. Children within the cult may have been used for its production as well. I intend to update as new information is found, and I thank anyone who takes the time to read and help the search. Edit 1 stating, "The show Treasure Attic got brought up a lot. While similar, it's not what I'm referring to. I'm led to believe multiple shows were produced and a production studio being found tied to the cult could be the key to finding this. The more overt nature of it could have been why there's almost no mention of it." Edit 2 stating, "It's also likely that this was made by a different studio and was just bought by the TFI. That would explain the differing from their other videos as well as the lack of info." Edit 3 states, "So around 2 days ago I attempted to contact an ex-member asking if they recalled this too. Well, they say they didn't. They did state that they recalled similar shows with very disturbing material." The answer to this question asked in the Reddit post is a piece of lost media with zero proof to exist. However, there is one fact that could be argued toward the media being legitimate in the post, and the fact that the cult mention has a documented media background, including programming for children.
Oh, beware of ghoulies and ghosties and long-legged beasties and things that go bump in the night. That does it. I'm leaving.
Hey, look at this. I've been cleaning out my desk, and I found this old book of my poetry. Operator, may I help you?
Hello, operator. Can you tell me how to get Sesame Street? Giant talking vegetables?
But luckily I've never seen one of those.
Hey, excuse me! What?
The cult mentioned in the Reddit post is referring to the Children of God, founded in 1968. It has been recognized under a number of legal organization names. Founded by David Brantberg, who first followed his father's footsteps as a minister in the Christian Missionary Alliance between 1948 to 1954. Berg was expelled from the religious organization for holding differences in his teachings and alleged sexual misconduct. But to resume his profession, his close friend and boss, Fred Jordan, gave him a second chance and permitted Berg to operate his religious practices in a Fred Jordan Soul Clinic in Miami. But as a result of seemingly breaking the law with religious conversion methods, he was banned from that soul clinic too. So Fred Jordan gave Berg a third chance and permitted Berg to operate his religious practices in a Fred Jordan Soul Clinic in a Texas location. But by 1968, Berg had founded his own religious organization, first known as the Children of God, referred to by the alias The Family by the organization's members. The year it was founded, 1968, being crucial to the traction given the Western counterculture movements of the 1960s 1960s, Berg provided an alternative to the youth of the Western world, presenting libertarian rhetorics but not liberal enough to turn to Satan or dismiss the concept of a higher power entirely, appealing to the young counterculture audience, an answer to the runaway teens and conflicted libertarians, presenting a new interpretation of old text for a new generation against the establishment. Berg's most prominent biblical interpretation was that God loves sex and Satan hated it, contrary to the common interpretation of the Bible permitting sex as unsinful under the correct conditions. Berg did not believe in the 10 Commandments, including the 7th, which opposes adultery. Homosexuality in women was both permitted and encouraged, but not men. Additionally, the art based off the religion was inherently postmodern. The term postmodernism refers to the questioning of assumptions in Western philosophy, utilizing the music styles of the 1960s counterculture, such as traditional folk protest songs and psychedelic rock. All of these bands made an impression that you could still love God, piss off your parents, and want the establishment in the shitter, and for the ladies to have some sex appeal without the consequences of sin. The organization became heavily reliant on propaganda and the new publication of the scriptures of Berg, who interpreted himself as a king and a prophet, being portrayed as the allegory of Grandpa. But unlike a lot of religious figures, Grandpa was a proven person on this earth and was still alive and publishing scriptures in the cult's peak. In this family, it was seemingly the grandfather, the Father, the Son, and the Holy Spirit. And amongst these scriptures included such illegal concepts were promoted, including incest and pedophilia, all justified in the name of love, seemingly given by God. People have continuously taken advantage of religious authority to benefit sexual desire, but this man took it to the next level by founding a private religion that permitted it, and was smart enough to actually go somewhere with it, with seemingly no restrictions to lust besides adult male homosexual activity. And over the next 3 decades, allegations of sexual abuse within the organization, including from Berg himself, accused by his daughters, and his daughter-in-law, and 2 of his granddaughters, claims of alleged sexual abuse. All of these through religious justifications, but that's just Berg himself. But over the course of his life, Berg went through 2 marriages, however, only the second is notable for the cult involvement. His second wife, Karen Zerby, who is 30 years younger than Berg, for 2 reasons. A, he couldn't legally marry a child, and B, he needed a trusted apprentice given his inevitable passing. However, Karen had a child that Berg was not the father of, named Ricky Rodriguez, who was unofficially adopted and raised within the cult family. Given that the lifestyle banded the traditional family entirely, everyone was viewed as one family, with the higher power being the grandfather. Children and adults lived under strict lifestyle regulations, including sexual practices, many of which broke the law even for mid-20th century legal standards. There's tons of documentation of the horrific lifestyles and stories of sexual abuse and mental consequences from those who were fortunate enough to have the mental capacity to question authority and resign. However, the horror stories of those brainwashed and raised within are not mine to tell. However, one aspect of the cult's history perfectly represents the mental consequences of the private religion. Berg had died in 1994, and Karen Zerby took over as the leader. Zerby was referred to as Maria, with multiple aliases within the propaganda of Grandpa. By the time Rodriguez was an adult, he had left the cult, but had seemingly had motivation to murder his mother, Karen Zerby, but was unable to get in contact with her. However, he was capable of getting in contact with his childhood nanny and sexual abuser.
Well, I got my Heineken. That helps a bit, I guess. I'm bringing a 6-pack along for the road. My little cooler. Hopefully, before I actually have to go, I'll be able to, make it a little more pleasant. I don't know, though. One of these fuckers to the head. I don't think there's gonna be much time to feel anything. Might hurt for a split second, but certainly no more than cutting your wrist.
He murdered her, then confessed to his crimes, then killed himself to avoid legal consequences. And Karen Zerby hasn't been seen publicly as of recent, but is seemingly still alive at the age of 77 as of writing, and is one of the most evil people alive. In its prime, the trickery involved propaganda to the youth that could be divided into 2 categories. Some of the music from the cult, such as LPs like Across the Sky, Fun to Learn, Magic of Love, are really no different from what you'd find at a Christian bookstore. That's the vanilla Christian entertainment that would serve as an introductory, the bait to the justification of sexual abuse of minors, like such art as the song Kathy Don't Go, which is still commercially available, and is a song about not going to the supermarket to not give money to the capitalist establishment even if it provides an essential, but the art was always intended to take advantage of an impressionable youth, and 1 year after the group's founding, something came out that changed the course of children's entertainment forever.
Why don't you call your show Sesame Street? My entire career as a TV educator nipped in the... What was that?
Sesame Street in its prime was a very progressive show for 1969 standards.
Me give 'em up. No more shoot 'em. Me make 'em heap good deal. Me make 'em. Indians don't talk like that.
For many children, it was most likely the first time they ever saw the inner city blues on television. It was set in the street, it's not bright, everything looks like shit, the only cracker you can see is Frank Oz's denim. And Sesame Street actually had the revolutionary concept of creating advertisements of literary concepts. Jim Henson and company prior had a background in commercials.
What you eating?
A sandwich made with Clausen's bread. Want a bite?
Sure.
Somewhere along the line, the media divisions of the Family International had realized, wait, we already make postmodern art to justify sexual abuse of children. Why not take advantage of a new effective teaching method, treating essential life concepts like advertisements, but to use creativity to not be vanilla? And Grandpa's creatives began to make puppet shows. That Reddit post describing one that apparently existed. However, there are only 3 to my knowledge that are proven to exist, with one being commercially released, which is similar to the vanilla Christian music, and the other 2 seemingly being leaked by ex-members. Let's start with the vanilla one.
That's the sound of the Snuffleupagus. He's here.
Treasure Attic is the only commercially released children's program made by the Family International. Treasure Attic, not to be confused with the Muppet Babies episode of the same name, is a variety show with its main characters starring the adventures of Uncle Joe and his puppet sheepdog Peepers, with a couple other animal puppets that visit the attic from time to time. And it has 80s kids show written all over it with all the signature transitions. There is a sheep puppet secondary character named Snowflake, but does seemingly not have any correlation to the mentioned sheep puppet in the Lost show. In the Bible, sheep are used as metaphors of Christ followers, so lots of Christian children's media uses them because it's a cutesy animal with a legitimate biblical purpose to be there. Uncle Jim is kind of like a knockoff Uncle Joey from Full House without the irony. Uncle Jim comes up to Treasure Attic, which isn't really an imaginative or creative location, which I don't mind because I think interacting in the real world is a good thing for preschool shows to have, but they do leave the attic frequently so every episode isn't a bottle episode, with the Uncle Jim and Peepers segments interluding the various segments of the show. The songs are surprisingly fine, which is an absolute rarity for shows of this level of obscurity. However, there's the occasional what the fuck moment.
Ran snowflake, then she tumbled down the steep hillside.
Like, there's a group of singing frog puppets, which have lips for some reason. Like, look at Kermit's Family. They have great designs because they don't have lips. Why did they give the black one big lips? Why is there even a black one?
Crime, racism. Subject, African Americans.
There is one segment of the show I'd consider Uncanny Valley, a music video of New Beats Music Do It Now, sung by a puppet named Miss Prompt. I wish the whole show was like this because these puppet designs are atrocious and that would make it more interesting. They have Muppet-like structures, but their facial features barely move. The character structures don't have mouths extending to both ends of the face, so they just kind of move like human mouths, but without the jaw fluctuating. So it's mostly singular expressions being dragged around, with no meaning, bringing no life to the life. Just slapping Sears wigs on puppets is one of the worst things you could do while puppet building. It's unstylized and often disproportionate. It makes it more uncanny from partially being resemblant of the textures of reality. I guess this is an electric light orchestra because I hear a single synthesizer being conducted. Look, her right hand is glued to her hip so they didn't have to move it. Surprisingly, the show isn't super religious. Some rhetorics are influenced by the Bible, sure, but it's not in your face with religious content. It's just kind of a really generic and dated 80s kids show made by bad people for a bad reason. It's the show equivalent of Grandpa's hippie bands of the 60s with minimally Christian art that the youth could appreciate, in this context being the children that they wanted to sexually abuse, and much like a lot of the music, it was commercially released. The show is a source of trickery which led to a specific form of Christian extremism, but doesn't have to do much with the true rhetorics of those who made it. Unlike...
See the nose in front of my face?
Well, you see, that's what happens when there's no light.
Those happy, loving puppets, with songs of love and songs of joy, a special time for every girl and boy.
These character designs are so fucking bad, it's difficult to describe exactly what's wrong with them. It's like if they made Betty Boop's 2D character structure into a puppet, because the cheeks take up a ton of the face, and Betty Boop was originally an anthropomorphic dog, hence the unhuman face of the human era designs, and then applied the unhuman design into a different medium, fucking up the 2D to 3D translation. Or the basic facial structures just remind me of rubber hose era facial expressions, which generally highlight the cheeks a lot, like they just made this the 3D character structure. That is the closest thing I could describe these characters' designs as. The show's entire concept is seemingly to promote love, to escalate the cult's understanding of love to the purpose of sex, the thing God loves in Berg's gospel, the title being a combination of love and puppet. Given that Berg was viewed as a living higher power, Berg in his Grandpa alias, one of the most overlooked villains of history, is casually a character in this show. Grandpa serves the role of a storyteller, retelling Bible stories with the insistence of loving thy neighbor, being one of the various segments of the variety show. Every segment has the moral of love, whether being a story or a song. Thankfully, the sexual concepts of love are not integrated, but the show is the tip of the iceberg for Berg's gospel that he published in his lifetime. Speaking of the life of Berg,
life with Grandpa, what can be more fun? Living where there's love for everyone, learning lessons each and every day, learning from the Word of God, the light to guide our way. Life with Grandpa, what can be more fun? That is why we are happy, that is why that we sing. It's because of Jesus, He's everything. We have a purpose in each new day, learning how to share and give God's love away. Life with Grandpa, what could be more fun? Living where there's love for everyone, learning lessons each and every day, learning from the Word of God, the light to guide our way. Life with Grandpa, won't you come along?
there was no effort in even trying to make Muppets for the show. These are nearly dolls with realistic textures with some mouth movements. I don't think it gets any more soulless than this. This show seemingly starring Berg and his family, the assiliants and the victims of sexual abuse, featuring the adventures of learning from Grandpa, who talks about how nice his grandchildren look.
Look at our pretty girls today. You're dressed in such nice dresses and your hair looks so nice. Thank you, Lord. Did Sarah fix your hair?
Yes, Grandpa.
Oh, she did a great job, God bless her. Yes, you look so pretty for all the children that are watching today. And David, you're such a big boy and so handsome. What a beautiful bunch of children you are. Well, praise the Lord.
It is a children's variety show just like the others. The show teaches other morals, but all glorify Grandpa in the process. For example, a doctor teaching information about sugar, crediting not science, but crediting Grandpa's information.
Today I have an important lesson to share with you from Grandpa. Did you know that this here is a killer and a thief that has invaded the world? Do you know what this criminal is? Yes, white sugar.
The show frequently has messages about the consequences of discipline to limit the chances of children questioning authority.
And what lesson did you learn from this accident, Davida?
That I shouldn't have been disobedient. I should have held your hand like you said.
That's right. And also you didn't tune in to the prayer before the walk, or even say amen when we claimed promises for your safety.
And so the Lord had to teach you a hard lesson for your disobedience. Always remember, the right thing is to obey.
If you can count this as a show, it's probably the worst show ever made, considering it glorifies a religious figure who is a real person and a child sex abuser, and there's not a fucking soul of anything in sight. But The Lovitz and Life with Grandpa may not be the only cult-exclusive shows that ever existed, hence the argument of the Reddit post, but perhaps the rest is private, contains worse things, illegal things, and maybe the remaining shows, if they were ever made, shouldn't be found.
Hey, yo, the pizza here. Oh, nigga! Ah! My ears burn!
Now come along with me in the footsteps of Jesus, and I'll show you why they do.
By the mid to late 20th century and even now, religious-oriented programming was and is not mainstream, given the inevitable divisive nature of choosing to follow or oppose a religion that limits the chances of commercial success from the apparent biases of Hollywood creatives. So those who chose to make religious programming hold the inevitable disadvantage of not being backed by a corporation with unlimited amounts of money, which affects the distribution and subsequently the documentation. The VHS era was also the peak of public access television, which was like YouTube at home in a way, being home to local, exclusive, obscure, no-budget shows. But this did come with less restrictions than the mainstream channels, so if you were able to be ape enough, people at home would record it. So only the most notable, for better or for worse, on the YouTube precursor really made their way onto the internet. So back in the day, if you recorded any public access, especially religious public access, you may physically possess rare media. These era and topical conditions can be applied to his reality puppet shows.
Oh, beware of ghoulies and ghosties and long-legged beasties and things that go bump in the night. That does it. I'm leaving.
Dated.
Hey, look at this. I've been reading out my dance, and I found this book with my poetry.
Operator, may I help you?
Hello, operator. Can you tell me how to get Sesame Street?
His reality puppet shows was presumably a spin-off of his reality TV miniseries, an incredibly obscure biblical discussion show, mainly focusing on commenting on the biblical interpretations of the conditions of the world among us, expanding the catalog of that series with a little help of the impact of Sesame Street. Upon its debut, Sesame Street did have a postmodern bias given the questioning of authority by making free-to-watch programming by representing racial minorities in a lower class and not holding a religious bias, which may have created a disapproval of it being viewed in some households. So Sesame Street's general lack of religion may have been an influence towards the creation of his reality puppet shows. The series intro is a parody of Gonna Make You Sweat by CNC Music Factory and Freedom Williams, famous for its chorus, featuring the intro of
Everybody praise now.
with this girl and like a talking shoe.
Done for you all your life through. Praise him again. Come on, say amen. Everybody over here, everybody over there, get your hands in the air.
And a bad 90s CG church bumping to the hippin' and the hoppin' and the bippin' and the boppin'. There are also floating hand motions which remind me of the narrator from the 1980 Weston Wood short Teeny Tiny and the Witch Woman based on the children's book.
Now I'm going to tell you a very old story. It's called...
Thankfully, the floating hands aren't that threatening. On the subject of song parodies, there's also a parody of I'm a Believer by the Monkey, but you probably know the cover from Shrek.
Thought God was nothing but a fairy tale.
Why do the performers have puppet legs? Why do they even make those? They couldn't just do it at a half body. There is a notable lack of frame define in some of the puppet segments. Way back in the 50s, Jim Henson's Sam and Friends was shot like a traditional puppet show, but was filmed within practical confines to make the puppets feel more real by not exposing the puppet attributes. Some segments of the show are just filmed in a traditional puppet booth, and there's no audio syncing at all, breaking any illusion of it being a show on television. The main host of the show is Grandpa, thankfully not the Children of God's Grandpa.
Hello, children. There's the audience. Let's wave hello. Say hi to the kids.
Hello. God bless you. Hi.
Grandpa is made of rubber and has teeth and is not a Muppet. The show actually consists of various types of puppets throughout the cast. Most puppets are one-off. There are a few reoccurring characters throughout the various segments, which is kind of commendable to make a ton of puppets, but does kind of lack an identity without a consistent ensemble to get attached to. There's Leo, a lion puppet, who is additionally kind of a co-host to conclude each episode, who also reports the news of God's love for oneself. There are various talking Bibles who directly cite passages. There's Mark, a news reporter for Christ, who also includes news segments. The other news reporter is Renee Lenz, a human insert of one of the puppeteers and puppet builders. There's an instance of some sailor Muppets, but they're not Muppets, they're Muppet-shaped suits, and the designs are cursed. They're like the Disneyland costume characters of Muppets, which are inevitably cursed given the inherently disproportionate nature. But what they were trying to do was create a human body Muppet like Big Bird, Barkley, Snuffleupagus, Sweetums, Thog, the Mutations, etc. Due to the fact that they need more than a hand to move, they're not built like the traditional Muppet, but these are built like the traditional Muppet. The show also has ventriloquist dummies and has some of the scariest ventriloquism I've ever seen. This shot features no human performer to interact with, and the dummy, who just has a completely disproportionate wig, progressively zooming while rambling about Christ.
To come into my heart, and I make you Lord of my life. Amen. If you prayed this prayer with me and really meant it, not only do you have a place in heaven, but God can also help you every day here on earth. Until next time, this is Stephanie reminding you that you're special and God loves you. Bye!
There's also a clown ventriloquist dummy, which is an odd thing to put in a religious preschool show because it's a combination of two common children's fears, or at least I think they're common fears for children. You know, because children aren't $30,000 in debt or whatever. The clown is my literally me character.
Well, I feel like no one loves me.
Jesus loves you, so do I.
Unlike Peppermint Park, this has the puppets interact with children. There's a puppet named Katie who has a mouthful of f***ing teeth, which is bizarre because most puppets don't have teeth.
Grover.
Show them your teeth, Froggy.
Grover, I was going to say to you, you know how I'm a frog, you know?
Yes?
Well, frogs do not have teeth, Grover. No teeth.
Open your mouth.
Compared to a lot of God's creation, He does care about us. And here's a poem about that.
Glad to see that Marmaduke gets a cameo. Star Wars is also parodied.
Between our champion of light, Luke Faithwalker, his trusted companion Han Solo, and his sidekick Chewbacca.
Which takes advantage of the arguable Methodist themes in Star Wars, given the Holy War between the Jedi and the Sith being the main conflict of the saga. One of the main segments of the show is the Weiser family. However, the Weiser family segments are reused from their own show, the Weiser Family Puppets, which is the more documented of the two shows. In fact, their VHS tapes aren't even super valuable. The Weiser Family Puppets consist of three main segments: the title character's songs, the title character's skits, and animated Bible stories. When the Weiser Family segments are repurposed in his reality, there's no context to anything. It just says, here's the characters, and then the song plays. Thankfully, in their show, there's a reason for the songs being sung, and the family members are actually established. The adult puppets have human hands with gloves, which are incredibly disproportionate once again. The lack of choreography in the musical numbers is incredibly distracting. It's mostly just reverse shot with nothing amusing happening.
Satan always whispers things you know are wrong.
That is why you need God's word. His word will make you strong.
Is that Chris Chan? It's Chris Chan as a Muppet. Probably because he's dressed like Ernie, but it's Chris Chan.
You say I have a boyfriend.
Wait, is the grandpa Bob Chandler with a mustache? The Asian girl got that John Lennon riz. A lot of the adults look high off their ass given the fabric covering of their eyes to make them appear slanted, you know, because like old people are sleepy or whatever, but what it really looks like is that they got some funky green. Some tapes package the animated Bible stories and the Weiser family, but both have separate tapes as well. The other Bible segments are just minimally animated Bible stories, and that's about it. And since the show, his reality puppet shows, has been forgotten by his reality.
Choo-choo! Here comes the train! How about here comes my fucking fist, bitch? Pow! Vegetables suck. Candy rocks. I'd rather eat ass than broccoli. Goku does not eat broccoli.